Hi, and welcome to the Fancy Comma YouTube. Today I'm joined by the inimitable Suchitha Champak, the founder of SciRio. She founded SciRio to change how society views science. SciRio helps scientists, academic institutes, and enterprises share their advances in science creatively. At SciRio, Suchitha combines capacity building, collaborative projects, and unexplored markets to engage the public with science effectively. After working at the Indian Institute of Science and Center for Human Genetics, she left the lab to prove that science is for everyone. She envisions a future where science and society co-evolve to empower everyone. She is a TEDx speaker, and news outlets like the Assam Tribune and BioPatrika have profiled her as a scientist turned entrepreneur. She also helped create proactive policies for science communication in the newest version of India's STI, which I guess is Science Technology Innovation, hopefully policy. Welcome, Suchitha. I'm so excited to chat with you as I've been a long time follower and kind of fan of SciRio. Tell us about SciRio. Why did you start it as a for-profit company when it could have been a not-for-profit entity?
Thank you so much for inviting me and wanting to chat on record about SciRio. SciRio is a company that works with academic institutes, the industry, and also with scientists at an individual level to help them communicate their science in creative ways. So it could be things as simple as writing a blog article to developing creative projects like coffee table books or comics, etc., that talk about their work to target audiences that don't have a background in science. So we've been working with organizations for the past 2 years, and before that, we also started off building capacity in India for researchers and science communicators who want to build their skills up, right? So these are the two main things that we do. And one of the main reasons we started off building capacity is when I started working on the idea. I spoke to a lot of people in this space, tried to understand the space, and this was mostly in the pandemic. So there was like I did have some time to figure things out and narrow down from like 50, 60 ideas that I had written down for how we should take this company across. So I realized that there was no path or direction for anyone who wanted to get into this space. The idea was to build capacity in science communicators in India, because I also realized that we can't do it ourselves and we need more people to be able to take science to people, right? So that's how we started off. And one of the main reasons that SciRio is a for-profit over a not-for-profit is that we wanted to legitimize the entire space and tell people that science communication need not be done as charity. Because, and one of the reasons I'm carefully picking these words is because the way this field or even the experts are perceived in India is that people are expected to already inherently have these skills and do this work for free or for a very low cost, which does not justify the efforts that are put in. So, what we wanted to do is, through our training programs and by offering services, wanted to show people that the actual need for SciComm, and that it's not as simple as dumbing down science, but actually understanding the nuances of communicating science to different audiences. So that's why.
I love the idea that you say we're not a charity. I don't know how many times I've told my clients, I'm sorry, I don't work for free. And I've told people that I do that, and they are always shocked. But it's like, SciComm, a lot of times we feel like we're just doing it for fun. You can get paid to do this, and you have dared to choose SciComm as a full-time career in India. So, what's that been like?
Oh, it's been challenging. It still is. Taking SciComm as a full time career is a luxury and a privilege to have, especially let's say in India, because I understand the Indian context very well, there are very few job opportunities, even the mainstream ones, if you consider institutional SciComm as one of the main job opportunities in India, right? So um, that that kind of an opportunity itself is very limited, and surviving as a freelancer is even more difficult unless you have years of experience and a network that trusts your work and knows your work very well, right? So in this space, building a company myself, and when I started out, trust me, I was a beginner as well. I didn't know as much SciComm as any other expert at that point would have. And when we had to build that up, it indeed was a challenge. And um, also, I had the privilege of doing this because I had a very supportive family, and I still do. In the last 3 4 years that I am in this SciComm space, I must say that the scenario is rapidly changing. I have seen an increased interest of people wanting to take up SciComm as a career, full-time career, or as a skill while conducting research, right? So that's one thing. And also, a lot of the mandates and policies in India have been evolving very quickly, and there have been spaces that are being created to do SciComm. For example, institutional SciComm until 3 4 years ago was non-existent in most of the even the top tier institutes. And usually people would confuse institutional SciComm with PR. And now things have been changing. People at least have one person as that constitutes this communication cell, SciComm cell. And people are open to taking up freelancers to get their work done, as opposed to thinking that their PhD students can do the job for them. So things have been changing. And also from the policy perspective, there have been changes that are coming in. Say, for example, some of the grants and funds that come in for research have a particular section called SSR, which stands for Scientific Social Responsibility, where scientists have to allocate some time and money to put their work out of their lab or institutional setting. So all of those things are helping, but I think the pace needs to really pick up, and there needs to be mandates or policies in place that can fast track upskilling scientists and researchers to be able to communicate their science.
I can relate a lot with like trying to make it a full time career. And I founded Fancy Comma in 2020, right before the pandemic started. And we're really lucky that I've been able to, well, it's not completely full time for me because I also do tutoring, but it's definitely a challenge. And so everything you said, I could resonate with a lot of what you said about the challenge of trying to do this as like a job. And actually, one of your goals in founding SciRio was to legitimize the SciComm profession in India and show that SciComm is essential. Have you achieved that?
I wouldn't say yes. It wouldn't be an affirmative yes, but we are heading in that direction. And it has been a rewarding journey, especially in the last, I would say, 15 months, because we have been able to sort of establish ourselves as a brand, if I can say that, in Zycom, where people look up to us and reach out to us and say that, okay, we need this help. So they don't know if we can help them, but they reach out to us right now and ask us if does that fall under your banner, and if you can help us. So a lot of the times, people think of research communications like writing papers, editing papers as our job, and I say that sorry, we don't do that. And so, sort of demarcating ourselves and identifying ourselves purely as a SciComm initiative organization, uh, and telling people that it's very different from research communications, is what we have been able to sort of clear out for ourselves and for people reaching out to us, right? And I mean, I must be. I'm very happy to at this point tell you that in the last 15 months, every month we have had a training program, and if not more than one, right? So that actually speaks volumes of how much people are keen on exploring the space as a career form or as a skill itself, right? So that's one thing, and also one sort of shift that I have seen people in institutions take is that one of the most important reports that goes out from an institute talking about their work to, let's say, policymakers is the annual report where they sort of put their work together. And people, what they would usually do is get excerpts from every scientist, every principal investigator, and just compile it into a booklet. But now people are looking to sort of get experts on board to actually make it more accessible even to policymakers, because that's something that institutes have started to think about, which I would say is a change. Another example is one of the projects that we're working on right now, where the scientists have a report that they have developed from one of their surveys, and that report is 1,300 pages long, and like it's a legitimate technical report. And they reached out to us asking if we can write a 50-page or summary report for this entire thing, which could be submitted to the policymakers, that sort of summarizes the findings and what are the next steps that could be taken to actually put the findings to use and build policies. So I would say that we certainly are a couple of steps ahead of where we started off, but we have a really long way to go. And on the other side, in terms of capacity building, we have been working with institutes, partnering with institutes to build capacity, but we haven't gone as far as we would have wanted, because people would invite us for introductory workshops, but taking deep dive workshops, let's say in science writing or podcasting, etc., or even let's say as simple as skills like storytelling, understanding your audience, whatever, right? So people would showcase interest, but they haven't been able to convert that for a lot of the other reasons, for administrative purposes, whatever. But I would say that there has been a demand for bringing back our own workshops that we were conducting before independently. And next month onwards, we are, relaunching our workshops. So that way, I would say that that is another good thing that has been happening, and we're really looking forward to that.
I've worked in Congress here in the US, and I've worked in the policy, informing policy, but I've never had to read a 1,500 page paper either in policy or in as a psychommer and summarize it in 50 pages. And that is a really hard job. So kudos to you for doing that job. But it's something that policymakers really need people to do that for them. And I don't know what the legislative body is of the government of India is like. India is very good in science and technology. The United States is not, doesn't have the same STEM ecosystem as India. I almost think that India values STEM socially to a higher degree than the U.S. So I wonder how many of your policymakers are have a STEM background themselves, because here it's like there's like three. I don't know that much about um, the government structure of India. I know the prime minister is Narendra Modi because he's visited the U.S. several times. I assume you have like a parliament of some kind, um, but um, but yeah, but so you guys are at the backstage. SciRio is at the backstage facilitating SciComm more so than doing SciComm itself. And actually, like in policy, that a lot of the work is just backstage work because the policymakers are the people doing this work themselves and voting and everything. So, in what ways in the policy world, in the science world, in the marketing world, because you guys talk a lot about the marketing and the transferable skills, which really, I really, I really, I think that's very valuable insight. So, how are you guys working in the backstage becoming SciComm facilitators more so than doing the actual SciComm?
We very carefully place ourselves as facilitators of SciComm, because I know a lot of SciCommers who are doing a great job communicating science and also training other people, right? So what we're basically doing is putting all the pieces together and offering it as a package for anyone who wants to get into this field, right? So that's essentially what SciRio does. Coming back to or addressing your first question about how many people in our um, legislation have a science background. Not a lot of them. They're very, very few. But I would say that, I mean, it's very hard or controversial at this point to be really talking about what science is and what it is not, because there's a lot of so science is woven really into the societal contexts, which can very easily be become which can easily become political, or you know can also lead to religious conflict. So at this point we are at a very tough point to really make people understand about what science is, what SciComm is. So that's a challenging space that we're navigating. But also in terms of scientific literacy and scientific temperament. Uh, as a part of our democracy, we have fundamental rights that say that building scientific temperament is one of the essential fundamental rights of every citizen of India. So that's where we would say that SciComm falls under, and we need to sort of foster that, or rather create spaces for building scientific temperament in people, right? So that's where I usually position myself when I'm talking to people. Coming to the second question about what was the second question again? Sorry, it's just got
Oh
lost in
no,
thought.
I was so curious about this. It's amazing that we have the same issue with not enough science literate people in our government. I mean, it must be a problem with government because they're all government people, so they never had to take science classes. But the second question was, in what ways is SciRio at the backstage facilitating SciComm more so than doing SciComm itself?
We sort of create solutions to any SciComm challenge that our customers or organizations that reach out to us, right? We usually classify our work in two ways. One is offering SciComm as a service itself, and on the other side, training people so that they can do their own SciComm, right? So on the first side of things, so like I said, I am not what do you say? I don't have a degree in SciComm, but whatever understanding and experience in SciComm I have is in whatever I've engaged with SciCommers, any training that I have taken, etc., that have been short courses, let's say. So I wouldn't call myself a SciCommer, but a facilitator for SciComm, because I put together resources for people. Let's say, for example, if we want to conduct a workshop and then there's a requirement that says that, we would like to train our students in science writing. So what I do is I tap into my network, put together or strategize a structure for the workshop, and invite resource people for delivering the workshop. And that delivery is not just by putting together the resource people, but also build a workshop structure that makes the entire experience very engaging. And so in a combination of, let's say, hands-on activities, exercises, etc., right? So basically we are giving people a full SciComm learning experience that they need. That's with capacity building. And with offering services in SciComm, what we do is we again tap into our network of people who have subject matter experts, let's say, if there's a report that's need to be written or an article that needs to be written in a particular subject matter, let's say cancer biology. So we have science writers who are cancer biologists. So we get them on board. And if we need an illustration or infographic, we have sci artists who have the background, at least in life sciences, let's say, who can deliver that for us, right? So this is how we push together resources to deliver something that our target audience or clients need. So that's why I say that we are facilitators. But yeah, so we position ourselves at the backstage of delivering SciComm to people.
I love that. And that's kind of one of those things that's a little bit selfless because we always, as humans, I feel like we always want to get credit for our work. And that's like journalists always get their name on the articles. But a lot of times, a lot of the work that I've done, and I'm sure a lot of the work that you've done, especially summarizing articles for policymakers, like the policymakers get the credit. It takes a lot of love for your fellow person and desire to help humanity to have that sort of selfless approach to the backstage, behind the scenes thing, which is actually a lot of times more important than having your name attached to something. As SciCommers, we're knowledge is power. That's a phrase in Farsi. Knowledge is power. In Farsi, it's tabanabavad harkat donabavad. But like, so I always had this phrase when I was studying at MIT. I had it on my wall, and it makes you powerful to be able to uh, do this work even if you don't get credit for it. So I love that. That's a huge part of Fancy Comma also is kind of being behind the scenes. I do a lot of ghostwriting and I wish I got credit for my work, but I never do. Fancy Comma is a lot less people than you. It sounds like you guys have a lot of people working together. Last question, and I'm really interested in this as a science policy person myself, and we already talked about this a bit. You've created SciComm policies for India, which is, by the way, very impressive. I wish I was able to do that here in the US in terms of science, technology, and innovation policy. How did you do that? And do you think other countries should do this and why?
So I wouldn't take full credit to that, and it was a collective effort. This was in the very early stages of when I was working on SciRio. So at that point was when the STI policy was being drafted by the government. So the STI policy includes everything from how you can improve research outputs to how can what are the different things that you can do to increase funding for research, scientific research. And a lot of the technology and innovation policies come in because the startup ecosystem in India is booming, and how can we sort of put all of that together. And one of the biggest achievements as a group of individuals we could have done is to be able to make the government create a separate chapter for science communication in the draft policy. This was done in the year 2020-2021, but the policy is still a draft, so it's still not implemented or put forward. So at this point we're also trying to figure out how we can get these things moving. There are a lot of things that happen in the background, and moving or pushing these policies out do take a lot of time. That's the experience that I've had in developing or drafting a policy for the government. And coming to the second question about if people from other countries should be doing that, I think it is very, very important to have, let's say, a policy or even a guideline to tell people or let people know that these are the different things that you can do to improve the scientific output or build the technologies or incorporate innovative or innovations in your entire process as an institute or a company, etc. It's very important for every nation to have such a policy. And not just it's not just about having the policy, but having specific direction to these policies, specific guidelines, and not being vague about it is something that the policymakers need to really be working on.
Policies in general take forever to pass, and sometimes they don't make it through committee. Here in the US, we have our bills have to go through the Senate and the House. Do you want to explain how India's government works to our viewers? I mean, we have some Indian followers, but just for people that might be interested in what your government system works like?
There's like a lot of things moving around, but I mean, in simple terms, we have the state government and the center. And so we have two houses, the lower house and the upper house. And usually the route that these policies take are they're presented in the lower house, and once that is passed with a majority, it is passed on to the upper house, and again the same process, and that needs to finally be approved by the president. And in between there are a lot of iterations that can happen, and of course depending on the interests of the parliament itself and both the houses, it can, like, get passed in like a week, or it can take like forever to be passed. So I think that's as simple as it can get.
It's kind of similar to our government. It's terrible. I've interviewed people from different countries and like Latvia, and or no Latvia, yeah, Latvia, and I was like, I don't even know what government Latvia has, but I learned a little bit about Latvia's government. So if that's one thing about talking to people on our YouTube is I learn about different systems of government, thinking, living, etc. And India and the U.S. are like great allies. So we have a lot in common. It's just there's so many different countries out there, and India has very, in the terms of GDP, India and the U.S. are very closely aligned there. It's important to have like an international perspective in science. And one thing I really love about science is that no matter where you live in the world, everyone can do science and, for example, math. Everyone in the world does the same kind of math, like it's like numbers. You don't have to know any different languages. So that's why math is called the international language. I feel like that with science as well. It's been really cool to chat with you. I honestly, it was a little bit intimidated to reach out to you, but I told Shardul, because we talked to Shardul, and he said that you're actually really cool and chill. And I found that you actually are really cool and chill. So it's been an honor to chat with you. I wish you good luck in your SciComm endeavors. Obviously, the goal is to have a full-time SciComm career and maybe even get credit for it sometimes. There's so many scientific challenges coming up that we're going to be indispensable.
Thanks, Shiva. This Shardul was really kind to talk to you about me like that. But it was really fun talking to you. This is one of the interviews where I've been like asked questions in very different perspectives. Otherwise it's mostly like, how did the company come about, etc. But now we, and also at this point for SciRio, we've evolved quite a bit, pivoted a lot of times, and at this point is where I've sort of realized that now, okay, this is it, this is the model in which we're going to work. And this was a very nice platform to sort of share, what we're doing at this point and how we are getting things done. So thank you so much for inviting me.